Margaret Holloway held the golden scissors like a trophy, ready to cut the ribbon on 96 houses that weren't hers. The champagne was already chilling, and the crowd, filled with families dreaming of their new keys, was perfectly staged. They thought this was a celebration of progress. They didn't know the truth. They didn't know the land under those perfect lawns didn't belong to the developer. It belonged to me. I walked up to the edge of the stage, my boots heavy on the fresh asphalt. Margaret's smile didn't flicker at first, she thought I was just another starstruck buyer. She didn't see the envelope in my hand. She didn't see the official land registry seal. I didn't shout. I didn't make a scene. I just stepped into the spotlight she'd built for herself and handed her the only document that mattered. The smile didn't just fade, it disintegrated. The silence that followed was louder than the music that had been blaring a second ago. Families stopped cheering. The cameras turned. And in that moment, the vision she'd spent months selling, the perfect suburban dream, began to tear at the seams. And all I could smell was hot asphalt baking over soil that didn't belong to them. 96 houses stood in perfect rows. Where my father's field used to breathe. Fresh paint. Clean windows. Not a single crack in sight. It looked finished. Too finished. Like it had always been theirs. But it hadn't. Margaret Holloway stood front and center. In a white blazer that caught the sunlight like a signal flare. She smiled for the cameras. That polished, practiced smile. The kind that makes people trust her. Before she even speaks. "Welcome to Willow Creek Estates," she said. Voice smooth through the speakers. Applause rolled across the lawn. I didn't clap. My boots sank slightly into the edge of the grass. Still soft underneath. Not fully settled. That was the first thing that felt wrong. Then I saw the sign. Luxury living, starting at $850,000. My throat tightened. They were selling something they didn't own. Buyers stood in clusters, holding brochures. Pointing at rooftops, already talking about upgrades. A man in a blue shirt laughed. As he signed something on a clipboard. Pen scratched paper. Fast. Confident. Like it was real. Like any of this was real. It wasn't. A breeze moved through the rows of houses. Carrying the faint chemical bite of sealant and new concrete. No history in that smell. No time. Just something rushed. Something covered. I stepped forward. No one noticed. Not yet. A server brushed past me with a tray of drinks. Glasses clinked. Ice shifted. Everything sounded too light. For what this really was. Margaret lifted the scissors. Gold. Oversized. Decorative. She paused for the cameras. Of course she did. This project represents vision, she said. Community. Progress. The words hung in the air. Like they meant something. I glanced past her. Past the ribbon. Past the stage. All the way to the far edge of the property. The old oak tree was gone. Just, gone. There should have been shade there. There should have been roots pushing up through the ground. Instead. There was a driveway. Smooth. Black. Perfectly poured. That was the second thing that felt wrong. They didn't just build here. They erased everything that came before. A kid ran past me, chasing a balloon. It bounced against a mailbox. Brand new. Still wrapped in plastic at the base. He laughed like this place had always existed. Like nothing had been taken. I reached into my coat. The envelope pressed against my fingers. Thick. Stiff. Older than anything around me. I hadn't opened it since I got back. Didn't need to. I knew what was inside. I was just waiting. For the exact moment. Margaret lowered the scissors closer to the ribbon. The crowd leaned in again. Phones raised higher. Someone started counting down from 3. I took another step forward. Gravel crunched under my boots. Loud this time. A few heads turned. Not many. Just enough. Margaret's eyes flicked in my direction. For half a second. Then back to the cameras. She didn't recognize me. Not yet. The countdown hit 1. The scissors touched the ribbon. And that's when it hit me. They built everything perfectly. Except for one thing. They never checked. Who actually owned the land? The scissors paused a fraction too long before cutting. Not enough for anyone else to notice. But I did. Margaret felt it. Something in the air shifted, just slightly. The ribbon fluttered in the breeze, still intact. Cameras kept rolling. People kept smiling. Nobody understood what was about to happen. Not yet. I took another step forward. Then another. Gravel cracked louder under my boots. This time, more heads turned. A man in a suit frowned at me like I had walked into the wrong party. Maybe I had. Or maybe they had built the wrong neighborhood. My fingers tightened around the envelope. The paper inside felt heavier now. Not physically. Just, inevitable. I could hear my father's voice in the back of my head. Calm. Certain. Never let anyone tell you what is yours. He said that standing under the oak tree that used to be here. Same spot. Same ground. Now covered in concrete. Margaret finally looked at me again. Longer this time. Her smile did not break, but it shifted. Slightly thinner. Slightly forced. She was trying to place me. She could not. That was the third thing that felt wrong. She should have known exactly who I was. The scissors pressed against the ribbon again. The crowd leaned forward, waiting for the cut. Waiting for the moment that would make everything official. That word echoed in my head. Official. They had permits. They had approvals. They had paperwork stamped and signed. I had seen copies. Clean. Perfect. Convincing. Too convincing. I stopped just short of the stage. Close enough to hear the fabric of her sleeve move when she adjusted her grip. Close enough to see the faint crease at the corner of her eyes. Not from age. From calculation. She was always calculating. I knew her type. People who believed paper could rewrite reality. People who thought if you filed enough forms, truth would eventually follow. But truth does not follow. It waits. A gust of wind lifted the corner of a brochure off a nearby table. It flipped open. A printed map of the development spread out across glossy paper. Every lot labeled. Every street named. My eyes traced the lines. Lot 12. Lot 27. Lot 54. All neat. All organized. All wrong. There was no mention of what came before. No trace of the original survey lines. No acknowledgement of the boundary markers. That had been here for decades. It was like they had drawn a new world over the old one and hoped no one would notice. I noticed. The countdown voice from the crowd had faded. Now there was only anticipation. A quiet kind. The kind that comes right before something irreversible. Margaret lifted the scissors again. Her voice rose, ready to close the moment. Let us begin a new chapter, she said. The words landed soft. Too soft. Like they were trying to cover something. I reached into my coat and pulled the envelope out just enough for the edge to catch the light. Old paper. Yellowed. Creased. Real. Not printed last week. Not approved last month. Something older. Something that could not be rewritten. A man near the front noticed it. His eyes narrowed. He leaned slightly, trying to see more. That was all it took. Attention shifted. Subtle. Quiet. But spreading. Margaret saw that too. Her grip tightened. The scissors dipped just a little. Not cutting. Not yet. For the first time, the timing slipped. And in that tiny delay, I realized exactly when to step in. I stepped forward before the scissors could close. That ribbon does not belong to you. My voice cut through the music clean and sharp. The crowd shifted. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Margaret froze, just for a second, then smiled again like nothing had changed. "Sir, please step back," she said, still facing the cameras. Polite. Controlled. But her eyes locked on the envelope in my hand. She saw it now. Really saw it. That was new. A man beside her leaned in, whispering something urgent. She ignored him. She kept her posture perfect. Always perfect. I moved closer to the stage. No rush. No sudden movement. Just steady steps. Gravel crunching with every footfall. The sound carried. Too loud for how quiet everything else had become. Someone lowered their phone. Another stopped clapping. The air felt tighter. Like the moment had slipped off script. Margaret lowered the scissors slightly. Not enough to admit anything. Just enough to stall. "If you have a concern," she said, voice still smooth, "we can address it after the ceremony." After. Always after. Push it away. Delay it. Bury it under celebration. I shook my head once. Slow. "No," I said. "This is the moment." A ripple moved through the crowd. Small. Uneasy. A buyer near the front stepped back half a pace. His smile faded. He looked at the houses behind Margaret, then back at me. Something did not add up. Good. It should not. I slid the envelope fully into the light. The paper caught the sun. Yellow edges. Creased fold lines. The county seal faint but still visible. Real ink. Not printed gloss. Not staged. A woman in the second row leaned forward. "What is that?" she whispered. No one answered her. Margaret's jaw tightened. Barely noticeable. But it was there. Her grip on the scissors shifted again. Not steady anymore. "Sir," she said, voice firmer now, "you are interrupting a private event." Private. The word hung there. Heavy. Wrong. I looked past her, over the rows of houses, over the driveways and mailboxes and freshly planted trees. Private? I said quietly. On my land? That did it. The crowd reacted this time. Audible. A low murmur spread outward like a wave. Phones lifted again, but not for celebration. Now they were recording something else. Margaret did not speak right away. That was the first real break. The first crack. The man beside her stepped forward. "Do you have proof of that claim?" he asked, trying to sound official. Trying to regain control. I did not look at him. My eyes stayed on Margaret. "I do." Simple. Flat. Certain. I slid one finger under the flap of the envelope. The paper made a dry, sharp sound as it opened. Loud in the silence. Too loud. Several people flinched slightly. Not because of fear. Because of tension. The kind that builds when something irreversible is about to surface. Margaret's smile disappeared completely now. No camera face. No polish. Just calculation. Fast. Desperate. She knew this was not something she could talk around. Not anymore. I pulled the document halfway out. Just enough for the first line to show. Old type. Formal language. Dates that did not belong to this decade. The man beside her leaned closer, trying to read it. His confidence faded as his eyes moved across the page. That was interesting. I let the paper rest there, not fully revealed. Not yet. The wind caught the corner and lifted it slightly, like it wanted to show more. I held it steady. This was not about rushing. This was about timing. Always timing. I looked back at Margaret. Really looked this time. And for the first time since I arrived, she did not look like she was in control. And that was when I decided exactly how much to show. I slid the document out just a little more, enough for the seal to catch the light and the date to become readable. 1972. Older than every structure behind her. Older than the road they paved over the past. The man beside Margaret leaned in closer, squinting, his confidence slipping with every second. That is not relevant, he said quickly, too quickly. Margaret did not repeat it. That told me everything. I lifted the page slightly higher. Not enough for the whole crowd to see, just enough for the front row. Their eyes tracked every inch of the paper like it might change while they watched. It would not. Truth does not shift. A woman holding a brochure lowered it slowly. Her fingers tightened around the glossy edges. She looked from the map in her hand to the document in mine. Something did not match. Good. It should not. The breeze picked up again, carrying dust across the stage. It settled on Margaret's shoes. Perfect white, now marked. She did not notice. Or she pretended not to. You are misinterpreting old records, she said, voice steady but thinner now. The microphones caught every word. No hiding it. This land was properly transferred. Was. Past tense. Careful wording. I tilted the page slightly toward her. Just for her. Her eyes moved fast now, scanning lines she had never expected to see. Legal descriptions. Boundary markers. Survey references that had not changed in 50 years. Her jaw tightened again. Harder this time. That was not confidence. That was recognition. The man beside her reached for the paper. Not touching it. Just close. Like proximity might give him control. We have certified documents, he said. Certified. Stamped. Filed. I nodded once. So do I. Simple. Flat. Final. A murmur rolled through the crowd again, louder now. Buyers turned to each other. Questions started forming. Not spoken yet, but close. A phone near the front zoomed in on the page. The camera caught the seal clearly this time. Real ink. Not printed shine. Someone whispered, that looks official. It was. Margaret straightened her shoulders. Reset. Trying to regain the frame. Even if that were true, she said, this development has already been approved and sold. Approved. Sold. She leaned on those words like they could anchor her. But approval does not change ownership. Sale does not erase origin. I let the silence sit for a second. Let it stretch. Let everyone feel the gap between what they believed and what they were starting to see. Then I turned the page just enough for the next line to show. The original boundary description. The one that included everything they had built. Every lot. Every street. Every house. A man in the second row stepped forward without realizing it. His shoes scraped against the grass. He stopped halfway, like his body moved before his mind caught up. All of it, he said under his breath. No one answered him. They did not need to. The map in their hands suddenly felt different. Smaller. Wrong. Margaret's fingers tightened around the scissors. The gold edge pressed into the ribbon but did not cut. She had missed her moment. The ceremony had stalled. Completely. Cameras were still rolling, but now they were capturing something else. Not a celebration. A fracture. I lowered the document slightly, just enough to break the direct line of sight. Not hiding it. Just controlling it. Timing still mattered. Always timing. I looked out at the crowd. Really looked. The excitement was gone. Replaced by calculation. Risk. Doubt. The kind that spreads fast and does not stop. Then I looked back at Margaret. And I realized she was not thinking about the ribbon anymore. The crowd did not sound the same anymore. The laughter was gone. Replaced by low voices and sharp questions that did not wait for answers. A man near the front folded his contract in half, then again, like smaller paper might fix a bigger problem. It did not. Margaret stepped forward, just enough to reclaim the center. Her heels clicked against the stage, precise and controlled. She lifted her chin, resetting her voice. This document, she said, nodding toward my hand, has not been verified. Verified. Another careful word. Not false. Not invalid. Just, not yet confirmed. That was her angle. Delay. Confuse. By time. I did not move. I did not argue. I simply turned the page slightly more, letting the lower section come into view. The signatures. Ink pressed deep into paper fibers. Not printed. Not copied. Signed long before any of these people had heard of this place. A woman in the crowd gasped quietly. She tried to cover it with a cough. It did not work. The sound carried. Margaret heard it. Everyone did. The man beside her stepped closer again. Too close now. We have county approval, he said, louder this time. Projecting. Trying to reach the back of the crowd. Everything has been reviewed. Reviewed. Past tense again. Always past tense. I nodded once, slow. Then you reviewed the wrong file. That landed. Clean. Direct. The silence that followed felt heavier than anything before it. A breeze moved through the street behind the stage, rattling a row of temporary signs. Open house. Model home. Sold. The signs tapped against their metal stakes with a hollow sound. Repetitive. Unsteady. A buyer turned around and looked at them like they might fall over. They would not. But something else might. Margaret's eyes flicked toward the man beside her, then back to me. A quick exchange without words. Calculation shifting again. Fast. If there is a discrepancy, she said, we will resolve it through proper channels. There it was. Push it away from here. Away from the crowd. Away from the cameras. Somewhere quiet. Controlled. I shook my head again. This is the proper channel. I glanced at the cameras. At the phone still recording. At the buyers holding contracts that suddenly felt fragile. They deserved to know what they bought. A murmur rose again. Louder now. No longer contained. A couple near the front stepped back together, instinctively creating distance from the stage. From Margaret. From everything she represented a few minutes ago. The shift was visible. Physical. Real. Margaret saw it. Her fingers tightened around. The scissors again. The ribbon stretched slightly under the pressure. Still uncut. Still waiting. That moment had passed, but the symbol remained. A project that could not officially begin. Not anymore. I lifted the document higher. Not fully overhead. Just enough to widen the view. Enough for more eyes to catch the details. Dates. Legal descriptions. Survey lines that matched nothing on their brochures. A man raised his phone and zoomed in further. The screen reflected in his glasses. He read something. His expression changed. Subtle. But clear. He lowered the phone slowly. That was all it took. One person understanding. Then another. Then another. Margaret took a step toward me. Small. Controlled. You are making a serious accusation, she said. Not loud. Not soft. Measured. I met her halfway. Closed the distance just enough. No, I said. I am stating ownership. The difference mattered. She knew it. The crowd felt it. The man beside her did not speak now. He watched. Calculating outcomes instead of controlling them. That was new. I could hear a siren in the distance. Faint. Not close. But getting closer. Someone else had already made a call. I had not. That was interesting. I lowered the document just a fraction, keeping the top visible. Not hiding it. Just holding the moment in place. Margaret followed the movement with her eyes. Locked on it. Focused. And in that second, I realized she was not trying to stop me anymore. The siren grew louder, cutting through the murmurs like a warning nobody had planned for. Heads turned toward the road. Not panic. Not yet. Just awareness. Margaret did not look away from me. That told me she understood exactly what was happening. Control was slipping, and she could feel it. This is unnecessary, she said, voice lower now, no longer for the crowd. Just for me. We can resolve this privately. Privately again. Always trying to move it out of the light. I shook my head once. You already tried that. Her expression flickered. Small. Fast. Almost gone before it formed. But I caught it. That was the first confirmation. She knew about the file. She just thought no one else did. The wind shifted again, stronger this time. It carried the faint smell of dust from the unfinished lots at the edge of the development. Areas they had not sold yet. Not touched up for the cameras. Raw ground still showing through. That was where the original survey markers should have been. I glanced in that direction. Margaret noticed. Her eyes followed mine for half a second. Then snapped back. Too quick. That was the second confirmation. The crowd started spreading out slightly. Not leaving. Just creating space. Distance from the stage. Distance from the center of the problem. A man near the front pulled out his phone and stepped away as he spoke quietly into it. Another buyer flipped through his contract again, faster now, like he had missed something the first time. He had. They all had. Margaret took a breath. Deep. Controlled. Resetting again. You are disrupting a legal proceeding, she said, louder now, projecting to the crowd again. Reclaiming her tone. There are protocols for disputes like this. Protocols. Systems. Layers. All designed to slow things down. To bury truth under process. I held the document steady. Then let us follow one. Simple. Direct. I tapped the lower section of the page with one finger. The part most people had not seen yet. The amendment. Filed decades after the original deed. Quiet. Unnoticed. Binding. A man in the second row leaned forward again, squinting hard. What is that? He said. This time, more people asked the same question. Not whispered. Spoken. The sound rose together. Margaret heard it. Everyone did. I tilted the page just enough for the front row to read a few lines. Not all of it. Just enough. Enough to trigger the right reaction. A woman covered her mouth. Another man shook his head slowly, like he was trying to deny what he was seeing. The amendment changed everything. It did not just confirm ownership. It restricted transfer. Permanently. No sale without direct authorization from the original holder. Me. Always me. Margaret stepped closer again. Too close now. That clause does not apply here, she said quickly. Too quickly. Her voice lost its smooth edge. Just for a second. But it was enough. I looked at her. Calm. Still. It applies to every acre you built on. The words did not need volume. They carried anyway. The crowd reacted again. Stronger this time. A wave of realization moving outward. Buyers turned fully away from the stage now, facing each other, comparing documents, asking questions that did not have easy answers. The man beside Margaret stepped back. Not forward. Back. That was new. He was no longer trying to control the situation. He was calculating exposure. Risk. Liability. The siren was close now. Very close. Just beyond the entrance. Someone near the back pointed toward the road. I did not turn. I did not need to. I could hear the engine slow. Doors opening. Movement. Official movement. Margaret heard it too. Her eyes flicked past me this time. Toward the sound. Then back to the document. Back to me. Her grip on the scissors loosened. The ribbon sagged slightly. Forgotten now. Completely irrelevant. I lowered the page just enough to meet her eyes directly. No barrier. No distance. You did not just build houses, I said quietly. You built on a restriction you cannot override. The word settled between us. Heavy. Final. She did not respond. Not immediately. For the first time, she had nothing ready. No script. No angle. Just silence. And then she looked past me again, toward the people arriving. The doors slammed somewhere behind me. Not loud, but final. The kind of sound that shifts a room without anyone saying a word. The crowd parted just enough to make a narrow path. Two officials stepped through, not rushing, not hesitating. Clipboards in hand. Badges visible. Not for show. For authority. Margaret saw them clearly now. Her posture changed again. Not confident. Not relaxed. Structured. Defensive. This is a private event, she said, turning slightly toward them, trying to regain control of the frame. One of the officials glanced at the banner, then at the stage, then at the document in my hand. He did not answer her. That was the first signal. Silence can carry more weight than words. The second official stepped closer to the stage. His shoes pressed into the fresh grass, leaving faint impressions that did not bounce back. Not fully rooted yet. Just like everything else here. We received a report regarding a property dispute, he said calmly. Not loud. But everyone heard it. Phones lifted higher. Recording again. Not for celebration. For evidence. Margaret smiled. Not the same smile as before. Tighter. Controlled. There must be some misunderstanding, she said. All permits were approved. Approved again. Always returning to that word. The official nodded once, then looked at me. Do you have documentation? He asked. I raised the page slightly. Enough for him to see the seal, the signatures, the amendment line. His eyes moved across it once. Then again. Slower the second time. That was the moment. Recognition. Not surprise. Not confusion. Recognition. He reached out, not grabbing, just requesting. I handed it over. The paper left my fingers, but not the control. Not anymore. The crowd leaned in without stepping forward. Like they were pulled by something they could not name. The official flipped the page carefully. Not rushed. Respectful. Old paper demands that. He paused at the amendment. His brow tightened slightly. That was enough. The second official stepped closer to look over his shoulder. They did not speak right away. They did not need to. Their silence did the work. Margaret watched them, every second stretching longer. Her fingers no longer touched the ribbon. The scissors hung at her side. Forgotten. Useless. A man in the crowd whispered, "What does it say?" Another answered, "I think it blocks the sale." Not fully correct. But close enough to spread. The murmur grew again. Faster now. Stronger. The official lowered the document slightly and looked up at Margaret. "When was this amendment disclosed in your filings?" he asked. Direct. No softness. Margaret opened her mouth, then closed it. Just for a second. But it was there. The delay. The gap. "Our legal team handled all disclosures," she said. Careful. Deflecting. The official did not look at her legal team. He looked at her. "Was it disclosed?" he asked again. Simpler this time. Harder to avoid. The crowd went quiet again. Waiting. Watching. Margaret glanced at the man beside her. He did not step forward. He did not answer. He stepped back. That was the moment everything shifted. Not visibly. Not dramatically. Just enough. Enough for everyone to feel it. The official nodded once, slow. Not agreement. Acknowledgement. Then he looked back at the document. Then back at the rows of houses behind her. All 96 of them. Perfect. Complete. Built on something they could not claim. He handed the paper back to me. Careful. Precise. Like returning something that never should have left its owner. "We will need to pause this event," he said. Not loud. Not aggressive. Final. The word settled over the crowd like weight. Buyers looked at each other again. This time, no one smiled. Margaret did not move. Not immediately. She stood there, in front of everything she had built, everything she had sold, everything she thought was secured. And for the first time, she looked like she was calculating how to keep any of it. The word pause did not stop the wind, but it stopped everything else. Conversations cut mid-sentence. Pens froze above contracts. Even the music, still playing somewhere behind the stage, felt out of place now. Too bright. Too late. Margaret did not argue right away. That was new. She stood there, shoulders squared, eyes moving quickly across the crowd, measuring what she had lost and what she might still control. The officials stepped slightly apart, creating space between them and the stage. Not aggressive. Just clear. This was no longer a ceremony. A man near the front folded his brochure and slipped it into his jacket like it had become evidence. Another buyer stepped away from the signing table entirely, leaving a pen rolling slowly across the surface. It stopped at the edge. Hung there. Then dropped. The small sound echoed louder than it should have. Margaret inhaled slowly. Reset again. Always resetting. This development has followed every required process, she said, voice steady, but thinner now. The words sounded rehearsed. Safe. But they did not land the same way anymore. The official closest to her did not respond. He was watching the crowd instead. Watching how quickly confidence can collapse when doubt takes hold. I held the document at my side now. Not hidden. Not displayed. Just present. That was enough. The amendment did not need to be shouted anymore. It was already working. A couple near the back began walking toward the exit. Not running. Not panicked. Just leaving. That was the fourth shift. When people start to leave quietly, something is already over. Margaret saw them go. Her eyes followed, just for a second. Then back to me. Then back to the officials. She was recalculating again. Faster now. The man who had been standing beside her stepped down from the stage completely. He did not announce it. He did not explain it. He just stepped down. That was the fifth shift. Distance from responsibility. A woman near the front raised her voice slightly. Are these sales even valid? She asked. No one answered her. Not immediately. The question hung in the air, heavier than anything said so far. Another buyer flipped open his contract again, scanning for something that was not there. Disclosure. Limitation. Restriction. Words that should have been printed but were not. The official finally spoke again. All transactions will need to be reviewed, he said. Calm. Direct. Final. The crowd reacted instantly this time. Not loud. But sharp. Buyers turned to each other, voices overlapping now. Not controlled. Not contained. Margaret stepped forward again, but this time it did not feel like control. It felt like reaction. This is premature, she said. We can resolve this without halting. She stopped herself. Just for a second. The word halting had already landed. Too late to pull it back. I watched her carefully. Every movement. Every shift. The confidence was still there. But it was fractured now. Not solid. Not absolute. The wind picked up again, stronger than before, lifting the edge of the ribbon. It fluttered loosely between the posts, no longer stretched tight. No longer waiting to be cut. Just hanging there. Unfinished. A symbol that had lost its moment. I glanced out across the rows of houses again. Perfect lines. Fresh paint. Empty driveways. Not a single person inside them. Not yet. And now, maybe not ever. The thought settled quietly. Not satisfaction. Just reality. The official turned slightly toward me. We will need copies of that document, he said. I nodded. Once. Already expected. Already prepared. Margaret heard that too. Her eyes locked on the paper again. Not with confidence this time. With something else. Something closer to urgency. And for the first time since this began, she looked like she was thinking about what she might lose.